And joining us now from the House of Commons is Jim Flaherty, the Minister of Finance for Canada and the MP for Whitby-Oshawa. How are you tonight, Mr. Flaherty?
I'm fine, Steve.
Glad to have you with us. I wonder if we could start with this. What is the evidence that you'd point to in this budget that proves that the government has used its time off during prorogation to recalibrate?
What isn't in the budget, I can tell you, because what I spent a lot of time doing, a lot of that time was with the Prime Minister in the last couple of months, was going through all the spending ideas that came from all the political parties, including a lot from our own members in the House of Commons, and assessing them, and in the end saying no to almost everything. It's harder to say no than to say yes. It takes more time, it's more difficult, and this is a no-goodies budget. This is the smallest new spending budget in more than 10 years in Canada, and we spent a lot of time on that. And the other important part was looking at the spending side and saying, how can we restrain the rate of growth of spending in the Government of Canada so we get a balanced budget in the medium term? And we agonized over that, but we came up with 3 big decisions that we announced in the budget today.
Okay, you say the medium term, but that's still 2016, and my hunch is, if I know you well, you would rather have balanced before that. You're taking what some would argue would be baby steps towards a balanced budget. How come you didn't try to get there faster?
Because of the world economic situation, quite frankly, Steve. You see what's going on in Greece now. There are other domestic economies in Europe that are of concern. Some of the assets of the European banks are still of concern. Unemployment rate in the United States is still very high. Our unemployment rate is still unacceptably high. Consumer confidence in the United States is weak, much better in Canada, but there are lots of reasons to be cautious, to make sure we continue to stimulate public demand in the economy, which we're going to do for another full year. That was our 2-year plan from the outset. We're going to make sure Canada is okay, and then we'll restrain the spending growth. But you have to make the spending growth decisions now. You can't do them, you can't turn the government around on a dime. So we made the decisions now for the next several years.
If you put the GST up by 1 point, and if you cut spending a little more aggressively than perhaps you wanted to in this budget, couldn't you get to a balanced budget faster?
You can always get to a balanced budget by raising taxes, Steve. That's an easy thing to do. The easiest thing for a politician to do is to raise taxes. Toughest thing to do is restrain spending and reduce spending in government. I know. I've been there provincially, and now I'm there federally. But you know, the reason we have a deficit is a good reason. We needed to protect the Canadian economy. We needed to make sure we could save several 100,000 jobs in this country. We've had 225,000 people having the benefit of workfare, 165,000 as we speak right now. These are all jobs that are saved because of stimulus spending. This was the right thing to do. I'm pragmatic that way. But now we have to go, okay, how do we get back to a fiscal conservative situation where we have a balanced budget? And those are the kinds of decisions that were in the budget today.
Okay, you've been finance minister for about 5 years now, and had you made any predictions 5 years ago about what the state of the economy was today, or what this budget that you've just presented might look like today, you would have been way, way off, as any finance minister would have been way, way off. Predictions about what's going on today, no one could have. So what is the point of predicting balanced budgets 5 years out in the future when we really probably don't know what's coming down that road 5 years from now?
Well, one has to be reasonable and make reasonable assumptions, and that's why we consult with the private sector economists. The assumptions that are being made with respect to economic growth in Canada are very modest, like 2.6%, 2.7%. Our economy, in fact, grew 5% in the last quarter of 2009, and Canada is in much better shape than the other Western developed economies. So there's lots of reasons to be positive about Canada. Modest in the assumptions, but positive going forward. And in terms of predictions, no economist and no finance minister saw the global recession coming, the worst global recession since the 1930s. I know, I was with them, I remember the discussions, and then I remember seeing what started to happen in the US economy with the subprime crisis in August 2007 and getting the calls from Hank Paulson, the Secretary of the Treasury, and nobody saw that, including Canadian economists. We went through a very dramatic time, but Canada's coming out of it in good shape.
In which case, where is the value in making predictions about what the deficit size is going to be 5 years down the road when, as you point out, I think one of the lessons from Paul Martin's budgets was that he never liked to guess about what was going to happen more than 2 years out. You're now predicting 5 years out. Where's the value in that?
Well, yeah. Well, you have to make reasonable assumptions, and you have to make a fiscal plan for the government over a longer period of time. You know, you can't plan Department of National Defense acquisition of Navy ships on the back of an envelope. That has to be planned over a 7 to 10 year period. You can't plan serious EI reform without planning ahead and making sure that funds will be available and the appropriate work can be done. You can't plan a lot of long-range things in government in the short term. So that's why we go out. We don't go out 10 years or 15 years, but we go out 5 years. And you're right. The farther we go out, the greater the degree of uncertainty, and any economist would agree with that. In the nearer term, it's more likely to be accurate. In the longer term, it can be a little bit low, but it could also be significantly better when we get to that time.
Mr. Flaherty, I think that's our time. It's good of you to join us tonight on TVO. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, Steve. Thank you.